I planned my 65th birthday for weeks. A table set, candles lit, a cake waiting, but nobody came. Hours later, I saw why. My daughter had taken them all on a cruise, celebrating while leaving me behind. It wasn't just cruel, it was calculated. They wanted my $2.5 million estate, but the letter I had hidden would turn their betrayal into their downfall. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and tell us where you're listening from in the comments. I sat in the living room, the house quiet in a way that cut through me more than any noise ever could. The dining table still held the remains of what should have been a celebration. Plates polished, candles burned down to their stubs, a cake with only a single slice missing because I had forced myself to taste it, even though my appetite was gone. The silence echoed louder than laughter. Above the fireplace hung the framed photo of my late wife, Margaret, her smile frozen in time, reminding me of the warmth that used to live here. Now it felt cold, heavy with absence. I whispered to her photograph the way I sometimes did when the pain was too much. "You see this, don't you? You see how they left me here, alone?" My daughter Angela had been my pride. For years, I carried her on my shoulders through every financial storm, working 2 jobs at times, thinking it was worth it because she deserved the best. I remembered signing the check for her college tuition, $60,000, scraped together from years of savings, overtime shifts, and nights when I came home too tired to even eat. She got that degree. She got the start I never had. I bought her a car when she turned 23, a silver sedan that cost $25,000, reliable and safe, because I told myself a young woman needed security on the road. And the wedding, good Lord, the wedding. $50,000 gone in one weekend for the white dress, the flowers, the rented hall, the photographer, the band. I told myself at the time it was money well spent, that seeing her happy was worth more than any number in a bank account. Sitting there in that dim room, the scent of cold food lingering in the air, I realized every sacrifice had been turned into a weapon against me. I looked around the house, the one I had built brick by brick of my own sweat and labor. This was not just property, it was a story, a living archive of my life. The hardwood floors in the living room, I had laid them myself, every plank nailed down on weekends with Margaret handing me tools and laughing at how I measured everything 3 times before cutting. The house was worth $700,000 now, maybe more in this market, but to me it was beyond numbers. On the mantel sat the photo of our wedding day, her in a veil, me in a suit that never fit quite right, both of us beaming like the future was ours to shape. There was the old grandfather clock in the corner, its steady tick marking every year of our marriage, every Christmas morning, every Thanksgiving dinner. This home had held the sound of my children's laughter, the smell of Margaret's cooking, and the warmth of family. And now the very people who grew up in these walls were plotting to sell it out from under me, to strip it of meaning, to turn it into cash in their accounts while pushing me into a nursing home like a forgotten relic. It wasn't just the birthday that stung. This betrayal had roots, moments that stretched back years, signs I ignored because I didn't want to believe my own blood could be so cold. I remembered Ben's 7th birthday. I had arrived with wrapped gifts, balloons, ready to see his eyes light up. Angela met me at the door, saying with that fake sweetness, "Oh, Dad, I think you got the date wrong. It was yesterday." But I heard laughter inside. I heard children's voices, and when I glanced through the window, the party was in full swing. They had simply excluded me. At Christmas, Mark told me they wanted a small family gathering, just the 4 of us. Later that night, I saw pictures online of a huge celebration, 20 people crowded around a tree, Angela smiling in the center. At Sophie's school recital, I was told it started early in the morning, only to find when I arrived that it had already ended, though I later saw photos of them with the teacher, all smiles without me. Every time, a little piece of me was pushed further to the edge, as though I was being erased bit by bit from their lives. The anger inside me burned like a furnace. I had given everything to them, and in return, I was being treated like a burden, like an obstacle standing between them and the fortune they wanted. I muttered again to Margaret's photo, my voice breaking. "You see what they're doing, don't you? They are turning me into a stranger in my own house, making me the outsider in a life we built together. They are cutting me out, and I don't know if I can take it." Tears welled in my eyes, but anger held them back. The betrayal was too sharp. This was not just carelessness, not just distance. This was a strategy. Cold, deliberate, calculated. I sat for hours, staring at the framed memories around me, trying to decide if I was crazy or if I had finally woken up to the truth. Angela and Mark wanted my estate. They wanted control of the bank accounts, the house, everything. They thought if they isolated me, if they made me feel useless, I would eventually give in. They would push me into a nursing home, sell this house for $700,000, drain the savings, and live out their lives in comfort while I faded away. I clenched my fists. They thought they could erase me, but I was not ready to be erased. In that moment, something shifted. The grief of being excluded from birthdays and holidays turned into a sharp clarity. I finally understood that this wasn't just about hurt feelings. This was about survival, about dignity, about justice. I felt Margaret's presence in the quiet room, as if she were standing behind me, whispering not to let them win. My chest tightened, but not with sadness anymore. It was determination. I looked at the documents I had tucked away for years, the life insurance policy, the deed to the house. These were not just pieces of paper. They were shields, weapons if I needed them. For the first time in months, I felt a sense of power stirring in me. I rose from the armchair, my knees stiff, the sound of the grandfather clock filling the silence. I walked to the old wooden desk Margaret and I had bought decades ago at a flea market. The drawers creaked as I pulled them open, dust rising like smoke. Inside were the files I hadn't looked at in years. The life insurance policy, still valid, naming me as the sole holder. The deed to this house, signed and notarized with my name clearly printed, is proof that no one could take it without my consent. I ran my fingers across the edges of the papers as if touching the weight of my own life. My pulse steadied. The betrayal was deep, yes, but it would not be the end of me. The light outside had shifted to late afternoon, golden rays cutting through the blinds and spilling across the living room floor. The air smelled faintly of old wood and lingering smoke from the extinguished candles. This house carried every mark of my life, and I swore then and there I would not let them turn it into their prize. I would fight, not only for the money, not only for the bricks and wood, but for the memory of Margaret, for the love we had poured into these walls, for the dignity of knowing I was not a man to be pushed aside. I folded the papers back carefully, but not before pressing them close to my chest. "They think they've won," I said softly to the empty room. "But they don't know what I'm holding in my hands." The documents felt heavier than their weight in paper. They were my chance, my leverage, my voice. For too long I had sat quietly while they erased me piece by piece. That ended now. As the clock struck 6, I knew chapter 1 of my story was over. The man who had sat at a lonely birthday table, humiliated and heartbroken, was gone. The man who stood now had seen the truth, and he was ready. Ready to act, ready to confront, ready to make sure that the betrayal that had nearly destroyed him would instead destroy the ones who had plotted it. The room around me was the same, the photos the same, the silence the same, but inside me, everything had changed. I closed the drawer and let my hand rest on the polished wood, warm from the afternoon sun. I whispered one last time to Margaret, "I won't let them take this from me. Not you, not our home, not the life we built. They'll regret what they've done. I promise you." And with that, I turned off the lights, leaving the cold remains of the birthday dinner behind. Tomorrow would be different. Tomorrow I would take the first step toward reclaiming everything they thought they had already stolen. I woke before the sun and stood in the kitchen, listening to the refrigerator hum like a tired friend. The candles from my birthday were still welded to the placemats in puddles of wax, small monuments to a night that did not happen. I scraped them clean with a butter knife, made coffee, and dressed. Blue sport coat, clean shirt. The watch Margaret gave me on our 20th anniversary. I touched her photo on the dresser and said, "Stay with me." Then I took the deed and the policy from the desk and slid them into my briefcase. The latch clicked and my hands stopped shaking. Catherine Lewis's office sits over a bakery on Main Street. The hallway smells like sugar and furniture polish. Inside, dark wood panels, tall windows, a row of framed admissions, and a legal pad were waiting on the table. Catherine came in with that quiet authority of someone who spends her days turning panic into plans. "Tell me everything," she said, and I did. I told her about the empty seats at my 65th birthday, about the cruise photos, the captions about family, the way the roast cooled in my oven while I waited for a doorbell that never rang, about Christmas on a screen, the recital with a wrong start time, the way each absence felt less like forgetfulness and more like a rehearsal. "They call it simplifying," I said. "It feels like erasing." "How much is at stake?" she asked. $2.5 million, give or take," I said. "Retirement, savings, a small brokerage, and the house. $700,000 and no mortgage. It is the one place that still feels like mine." "Who can touch your money?" "Only me," I said. "Angela has view access on checking for a couple of bills. She and Mark keep pushing for a power of attorney. They call it simplifying." Catherine tapped her pen once. "From this minute, you sign nothing without me. We'll lock the liquid accounts, add branch-only controls, and flag your profile so nothing moves without your face across the counter. For the house, I'll record a letter at the county so a deed cannot be accepted without your sworn signature. If anyone wants your property, they go through me first." She flipped another page, and her voice softened without losing steel. "We also get your framework current, updated will, revocable living trust for smooth administration under your control, new healthcare proxy, and limited power of attorney that only springs if 2 doctors say you cannot act. No blank checks. Clear boundaries in writing. Paper can be a wall. We will build one." Something steady moved back into my chest. "Thank you," I said. "Call your bank from here," she said. Speaker on. Calm voice. I'll step in if needed. I dialed Lakeside Federal. After the menu and the hold music, a man named Howard answered. He verified me with old questions that still lived in my mouth, the name of the lake where Margaret and I picnicked, the street of our first apartment. "I need a hold on savings," I said. "Any withdrawal over $5,000 requires me in person. Freeze $300,000 until I sign new forms at the branch. Put a code word on profile changes." "What code word?" he asked. I looked at Catherine. She slid a sticky note across the table. "Night lock. Margaret's phrase, every evening while I turn the deadbolt." "Night lock," I said. Howard typed. "Okay, thresholds and freeze are in place. One thing, Mr. Patterson, last week someone attempted to add an external transfer and queue $45,000. It failed on the second factor." "Was that you?" Cold moved down my back. "No," I said. Catherine leaned toward the speaker. "This is Attorney Catherine Lewis. Mark that attempt unauthorized, flag the profile to branch manager review only, and send a security log to my office by the end of the day." "Yes, ma'am," he said, his tone shifting. "Anything else?" "Remove view access for my daughter," I said. "It's removed," he replied. "You're all set." When I ended the call, Catherine flipped to a fresh page. "We'll update your will and beneficiaries this week. If you ever need care, we plan it. We do not finance it by giving away your house. Stop by the branch and sign new cards today. And take this." She pushed a small digital recorder toward me. "One-party consent state. Press once, it vibrates. If they push you, if they admit something, record it. Calm wins." I drove straight to the branch because paper matters. In a glass room that smelled like carpet cleaner, the manager turned forms toward me. I initialed boxes and signed full signatures where it counted. I chose security questions that only Margaret and I would know. The branch manager introduced himself as Evan and lowered his voice. There was also a recent request to replace your debit card and a draft change of mailing address that never completed, he said. We've blocked address changes, added a branch-only note, and I'll personally approve anything unusual. Ask for me if you come in. Good, I said, feeling the ground under my feet firm by inches. He added a note to the file, slid the final signature card across the table, and we both watched my pen lay down a line of ink that felt like a small fence around a garden. He walked me to the door and told me if anyone gave me trouble, I should call and ask for him by name. On the drive home, I took the long way past the park where we taught Angela to ride a bike. I could still see Margaret jogging beside that small red Schwinn, one hand on the seat until our girl found her balance and flew. Back then, every bill felt like a mountain, and we climbed them together. $60,000 for college, $25,000 for a used car when she started work, $50,000 for a wedding she swore would be simple and then wasn't. I paid them gladly because that is what family means. Toda, those numbers felt less like memories and more like weights being tugged toward the bottom by other hands. I parked in front of the house and sat looking at the porch. The mailbox leans, friendly and tired. Inside, the floors I laid with my own hands catch the afternoon light like little rivers of amber. There is a nick in the hallway where Ben's truck clipped the baseboard, a dent beneath the dining chair where Sophie swings her feet. This is not a pile of boards to be liquidated. It is a place. It is memory made visible. 700,000 on paper, but to me it is 28 years of mornings, of coffee and birthdays, and Margaret humming while she watered the plants. Before I went inside, I rehearsed on Thursday. I would open the door with steadiness. I would offer water. I would sit at the head of my table and let them spread their forms. I would not raise my voice. If Angela said streamlining, I would remember Evan's warning about address changes and card replacements, and I would hear Catherine, calm wins. If Mark pushed, I would press the recorder and let his words take their own weight. If they tried to make me small, I would stay full-sized. If they called me sentimental, I would say I am careful. If they called me stubborn, I would say I am free. I unlocked the door, and the house breathed. The grandfather clock ticked its patient tick. Light slanted across the mantel and turned Margaret's smile warm. "We built this," I told her softly. "I'm not letting anyone sell it out from under your picture." I set my keys in the bowl and walked toward the kitchen. The bell rang. On the porch stood a man I did not recognize. Mid-40s, dark hair, a careful posture, as if one wrong step would crack the porch boards. "Mr. Patterson?" he asked. "I'm David Morales. I need to speak with you about Ben." Hearing my grandson's name in a stranger's mouth made the floor tilt. I left the chain on for a second, then slid it back. "Come in," I said. He glanced at the photos on the wall, taking them in. We sat. He kept his hands laced and his eyes steady. "This is going to sound impossible," he said. "I was with Angela before she married Mark. 2 years. Then she left. A few months ago, I saw her with a boy. He looks like I did at his age. Same eyes, same chin. I have a small scar from a bike fall. He has one in the same place." He slid 2 papers across my coffee table. A photo of Ben, sunlight in his hair, the serious look he gets when he's concentrating, and a copy of a birth certificate. The line for father was blank. The blank felt louder than ink. "I had a lab run a test," he said, voice shaking once and then steadying. "From hair I saved after he got a haircut. I know how that sounds, but I could not stand not knowing. The results came this morning. I did not open them. I wanted to bring them to you sealed." He took a manila envelope from his jacket and set it on the table. It carried the lab's return address and a case number. He did not push it all the way toward me. He left it where we both could see it, like a small flare. Anger rose in me, not the blind kind, the clarifying kind. "Why bring this to me?" I asked. "Because people who hide a father on a form do not stop there," he said. "Because if Angela could erase my name, she could erase yours, or move what is yours somewhere you can't reach. I am not here to hurt Ben. I want the truth. I want to protect him from a lie big enough to swallow a child. I looked up at Margaret's photo and then at the envelope. We won't open it today, I said. Not without counsel, not without a plan. Relief softened his face. Thank you, he said. If I'm wrong, I'll disappear. If I'm right, I do not want to take him from your life. I want a seat at the table, not the table. We agreed on the next steps. I would call my lawyer. He would be available. He would not contact Angela. He would not approach Ben. He would wait. After he left, I set the envelope beside my briefcase and Catherine's card. 3 rectangles in a neat row. Lawyer, evidence, history. I called Catherine and told her everything. She listened, then said, "This clarifies motive. It also gives us leverage. Come in tomorrow morning. We'll record a letter with the county recorder stating that no deed in your name may be accepted without your notarized signature. Then I want you to invite Angela and Mark to your home for a short meeting this week. Tell them I will be present. Let them bring whatever their planner prepared. You will sign nothing." A calm settled over me like a good coat. "Thursday," I said. 6? "Good," she said. "Bring the sealed envelope. I'll log it and photograph it. We will choose our moment to open it, and keep the recorder in your pocket. If they press you on the phone, use it." I ended the call and walked through the house with a purpose that felt both new and familiar. I straightened frames. I dusted the mantel. I put away the crystal Angela had once called fussy, because tonight I wanted only plain things within reach. I warmed soup and ate at the table. I wrote one sentence on a sticky note and stuck it to the fridge. Thursday, 6. Recorder on. Do not sign. Catherine is to my left. The words steadied me like a hand on my shoulder. I felt ready, steady, and unwilling to give an inch today. Morning brought a pale light and clear purpose. I met Catherine, signed letters in blue ink, and watched her stamp the documents with a firm press. She photographed the sealed lab envelope and had me sign the back flap with the date to mark that I had received it unopened. She handed me the recorder again and made me feel the small vibration. "Calm winds," she said a second time, and I believed her. Back home, I cleaned the dining room as if polishing wood could polish resolve. I ironed the runner, set the good forks, placed 2 pens by the empty chair to my left, filled a pitcher with water, and set a small bowl of mince in the center. Not to sweeten anything, I rehearsed answers out loud. My lawyer will review everything. I'm not signing today. We can schedule what needs scheduling. I said them until they landed without tremor. I walked the perimeter and checked the doors and windows. I programmed the number for the local non-emergency police line into my phone, not because I expected to use it, but because preparedness lowers the temperature of a room. I laid Catherine's card by the table's edge, where my left hand could rest on it without looking obvious. I slid the recorder into my jacket pocket and pressed the button once to feel the vibration. Practice matters. Angela called that evening. "Dad, about Thursday. We'll bring some standard forms the planner recommends. Nothing major. Just streamlining in case anything happens." "Bring whatever you want," I said. "We will look at them together." She gave a gentle laugh that felt like a test. "Lawyers make simple things complicated." "Sometimes complicated protects simple," I said. She changed the subject and ended quickly, like someone pulling her hand away from a hot pan. I stood in the quiet kitchen and pressed the recorder button once, then off again, just to feel the answer. The next morning, there was a manila envelope on my porch with my name in careful block letters. Inside was a short note in David's hand. "The lab issued the result," it said. "I could not open it without you. If you want me there, call. If you want to wait for your lawyer, I will wait." Folded behind the note was a second sealed envelope from the lab with the word "Results" in red at the corner and my case number typed beneath it. I set it next to the first one. The two lay side by side like closed eyes. I worked the yard to settle my head, raked leaves into piles, trimmed the hedges. brought the trash bins to the curb and back. Ordinary tasks are bridges. By late afternoon, my muscles ached in a useful way. A knock came at the back door. David stood there, hands in his coat pockets, eyes steady. "I have documentation from my attorney," he said, handing me a third envelope. "Chain of custody for the hair sample, receipt from the lab, and my sworn statement. Whatever happens, I want your lawyer to have what she needs." "I appreciate it," I said. He stayed on the porch boards, careful not to cross a line I had not invited him across. We shook hands. "I'll be nearby Thursday," he said. "If you call, I'll come." Evening fell like a soft curtain. I set the table. I placed the recorder in my jacket pocket and practiced the button until the small vibration felt as familiar as a heartbeat. I walked through the house and touched what mattered. The banister I sanded, the doorknob that sticks in summer, the frame around our wedding photo. "Night lock," I said out loud as I checked the doors, and the words steadied me the way they always had. On Thursday, as the light thinned and the street lamps blinked awake, I took the 3 sealed envelopes from the desk and slipped them into my inside pocket. Evidence, results, documentation. Paper can be armor if you carry it right. I set the pitcher of water on the table and the 2 pens by Catherine's place. Then I stood in the hallway and let the house settle around me. In a few minutes, the bell would ring, and my daughter would walk in with her husband and a stack of papers meant to erase me from my own table. Before the bell, a soft knock came at the back door. David again, breath clouding in the cool air, another envelope in his hand. "Certified copy from the lab," he said. "I haven't opened mine. I wanted you to have yours first." I slid it into my jacket next to the others, paper against paper. Weight I could feel. "Thank you," I said. "Wait nearby." "I will," he said. When he left, I stood a moment in the kitchen and listened to the clock over the stove beat out the last quiet seconds before change. My hand rested against my breast pocket. The edges of the envelopes pressed through the fabric as if to remind me they were real. In the dining room, the table waited, polished, calm, ready. I placed my palm on the chair at the head and breathed. They think I am old. They think I am alone. They think this house is theirs to list and sell. They do not know what I carry. The doorbell rang once, clear and bright. I glanced up at Margaret's photo, that smile I have loved in every season. "Watch," I whispered. "It starts now." In my pocket, sealed and silent, the truth waited for its moment. They arrived 10 minutes late, the kind of late meant to tilt a room. I opened the door, and the cool evening came with them. Angela looked perfect in a cream sweater and lipstick that stayed inside the lines. Mark came with a leather folder and the relaxed grin of a man who believes the end of a conversation is already written. I stepped back and let them in, past the coat rack, past the photos that trace this house the way rings trace a tree. The dining room lamp poured a warm circle on the table where I had set water glasses, and nothing else. Catherine sat at the far end in a navy suit, small notebook open, pen-capped, eyes steady. I had introduced her earlier as my attorney. I did not apologize. I have learned there are only 2 kinds of apologies that matter, the ones that repair damage and the ones that hand you to the person holding the knife. I kept both in my pocket and decided not to spend either. I gestured to the chairs. We sat. The chair legs made honest sounds on the floor. Catherine clicked her pen, a quiet metronome that said, "We can talk or we can fight, but we will do it on the record." "Dad, a lawyer," Angela said, aiming for light. "We only brought a few basics. End-of-life planning, streamlining. It is what people do." She set a tote down beside her chair, the canvas slouching like a cat. Mark pulled out his folder and gave the metal clasp a small, showy click. He slid a stack of papers toward me, then toward Catherine, when I did not reach. His voice moved into the gentle gear he uses on waiters and clerks. "Bills are a hassle, houses are work. Banks are impossible once you get past a certain age." He used the word simplify 3 times and the word family 5 times. He said they were worried about me and wanted to take things off my plate. He said all of it in the tone of a lullaby. I let the words pass by like water under a dock. The timbers know what they can hold. Catherine uncapped her pen. She did not touch the papers yet. "Why do you want him to sign tonight?" she asked. Mark smiled as if she had praised him. "Because it is efficient," he said. "Because schedules are tight. Because if we set another appointment, everyone will forget." Angela nodded, hands folded, eyes skating off mine. I pressed the recorder in my pocket with my thumb and felt the tiny vibration say, "Yes, we are listening." Catherine drew the top document into the light. The room made the small sound paper makes when a nail is lifted from a board. "This is not basic," she said. "This gives you signature authority over his accounts immediately and without condition. It attempts to deed the house to a trust you control. It includes a clause authorizing removal from the premises if you deem it necessary. There is a beneficiary change on a brokerage account for $200,000. The mailing address is not his." She turned another page, and unkind light found the pre-tabbed flags for signature and initials. "Who drafted this?" Angela looked at her lap. "We are trying to help," she said. "Dad loses track of dates. He feels overwhelmed. We only want to make things easier. See." She reached for kindness like a towel for a spill, too late to stop the stain. Mark lifted one shoulder. "He signs or he does not," he said. "No pressure. We brought options." "Since we are discussing pressure," I said, keeping my voice low. Lakeside Federal called about a blocked external transfer, $45,000. An address change attempt failed too. The branch manager locked my profile. Anything over $5,000 requires me to be in person at the counter. My code word is set. Nightlock? I let those last two words sit where they could be seen. Catherine did not look at me, but I saw the corner of her mouth tilt, the expression of a pilot who hears the tower confirm the runway lights are on. Mark's tone hardened. "You cannot keep this up alone," he said. "The house is too much. The costs stack up. One fall, one bad decision, and everything you built is gone. We are trying to save you from yourself." "This house has been saving me for years," I said. "I'm not a problem to be solved. I am the person who paid for the roof you stand under." Catherine turned to a second document. The air thinned the way it does before thunder. "Where did you get this?" she asked. I knew the page by its smell. I had found that draft in my office drawer 2 days ago, my name printed neatly above a waiting line. "It transfers $2.5 million in assets to accounts you control," she said. "It redirects tax mail and utility bills. It authorizes you to list and sell this property without his consent. Immediate and irrevocable are printed 6 times. She set the page down as if it might smear. Angela murmured a name for a financial planner I had never met. There was no business card. Catherine wrote the name and slid the paper back into a tidy stack that made a dull, satisfying sound. I let the silence grow legs. Then I placed 2 things in the center of the table. A certified copy of Ben's birth certificate, the line for father is blank. A sealed lab envelope, the flap signed over by me, the date a single long stroke. Angela drew breath like a swimmer surprised by cold. Mark frowned at the envelope as if it had arrived from the wrong department. "A birth certificate?" he said. "At a money talk?" "Truth touches both," I said. "Motives do too." I turned the envelope. "Chain of custody is documented. If we open this, we do it together, and we speak what it says out loud." Angela's voice turned thin. "Dad, this is cruel. It is humiliating. How could you bring this into our home?" "How could you bring those into mine?" I asked, nodding at the stack of transfers. No one moved. Even the clock held its breath. Catherine nodded once. "Open it," she said. The flap cracked. I slid the pages free. Black type, a table of numbers. The conclusion line is as clean and cold as a January driveway. I read it twice to make sure I was not reading my fear into it. Then I set the page where the lamp could not lie for anyone. Probability of paternity, David Morales, 99.7%, I said. Probability of paternity, Mark, less than 1%. If you're still watching and find this story interesting, please comment 1 below to let me know you're here with me. The words did not bang or crash. They landed, and the room changed shape around them. Angela's breath left her like air from a punctured tire. She gripped the table. Mark looked at the paper and then at me, his eyes searching for a lever that could move numbers. "This is ridiculous," he said. "It has to be illegal. It is a stunt." Catherine was gentle in a way that can only be learned by spending years in rooms like this. "It is lawful," she said. "It is admissible if needed. No one here wants a courtroom, but facts travel." Angela whispered, "You had no right." "I had every right," I said. "I did not leave a father line empty. I did not try to fill a deed line with my name." She put her fingers to her mouth. When words came, they tumbled. All the versions of it were complicated, and I was scared, and timelines confused me, and we meant well. Meaning well is a paper umbrella in a storm. It turns inside out the second the wind picks up. Mark pushed his chair hard enough to scrape a groove. "So what?" he said. "I have raised him. I have carried him. I am not getting erased." "No one erased you," I said. "You were erasing me. Birthdays, Christmas, the first day of school, banking decisions. You tried to put me behind a door and keep my accounts in your pocket." His politeness snapped like spun sugar. "You are old," he said. "You hoard a house and call it love. You hoard money and call it safety. We were willing to take on what you cannot." Catherine leaned forward, voice low, each word placed like a brick. "What he cannot is sign away his life. He will not be bullied. A letter is recorded at the county. No deed will be accepted without his sworn signature. His banks are branch only with identity confirmation. He has a current will and health care proxy. His power of attorney springs only if 2 physicians certify incapacity. The lab report you see is in my log and will be filed with my memorandum of counsel. That is not a threat. It is a list." Angela's hand shook. "We did not mean to hurt you," she said. "Dad, please." I did not answer that plea. I read, clause by clause, the transfer that tried to move my name off ownership, the paragraph that gave them authority to sell my house, and the sentence that shifted my mail to their address. Each line rang like a hammer on a rail. When I finished, I said the sentence that had been heating in my chest all week. "You wanted me to disappear. Your plan disappears first." Mark tried to regroup. He said every family does versions of this. He said the planner promised it was standard. He said a hair in a bag proves nothing. Catherine slid the chain of custody across the wood without looking at him, stamped signatures, dates, and a line of initials. She did not raise her voice. She did not need to. I set a second sealed envelope beside the first, the certified duplicate David had delivered. 2 quiet witnesses. The room seemed to grow smaller around them. "We are finished pretending," I said. "If your plans include my house or my accounts, those plans are finished too." Angela stood. The color had drained from her face. For an instant, I saw the child who once scraped a knee and reached for me as if my hand was the only shore. Then the woman stood again. "What happens now?" she asked. "Now," Catherine said, "we pause. You will not attempt to sell, transfer, or encumber anything in his name. We recommend a family counselor for Ben. We schedule a careful conversation with David Morales in a setting that protects the child. If you cooperate, this stays civil. If you do not, we litigate. Fraud on a vulnerable adult, attempted financial exploitation, bank security violations." She let each term find its own weight. Mark gave a short, humorless laugh. "A judge will love that," he said. "Grandpa, with hurt feelings." "A judge will hear recordings," Catherine said. "One party consent. He will also see drafts with mail-away notarizations and pre-filled tabs. He will see a bank log that shows failed attempts to move $45,000 and change addresses. He will see the chain of custody on a paternity test that explains motive. You can choose dignity or you can choose discovery. Choose carefully. He looked at Angela. Whatever moved between them did not look like care. He sat, smaller than when he walked in. "We need time," he said. "You have tonight," I said. "Tomorrow, Catherine files a notice with the probate clerk that my estate administration has changed. Any attempt after tonight is bad faith. Chi." Catherine stacked the papers, squared their edges, and slid them into her case. "One more note," she said, almost kind. "This meeting was recorded. The file stays quiet unless needed. If needed, it will be played." Angela's head jerked. "You recorded us?" Catherine kept her tone even. "I preserved my client's safety. Words matter." The candles on the sideboard had burned low and leaned toward one another like tired neighbors. The air smelled faintly of wax and something older, the scent that comes when an old story ends and a truer one begins. I felt scraped raw and strangely clean, like a man who has stood in a hard rain until the dirt runs off. Angela tried again. "Dad, I am sorry," she said. "Please." I breathed in, breathed out, and left the space after her words empty. "I hear you," I said at last. "I do not accept it tonight." She nodded once. "Do not tell Ben yet," she said, the request more plea than command. "He is little." "We will not tell him tonight," I said. "We will tell him well, and not alone." The meeting was over. Mark gathered his papers with stiff, careful hands. They walked to the door without the ritual of hugs. On the porch, Angela looked past me at the wedding photo over the mantel, the one where Margaret's veil lifts in the breeze like a white flag that never meant surrender. Angela's mouth moved once as if to say her name. No sound came. They went down the steps together, not in step. When the latch clicked, the house exhaled. I set my palms on the table and felt the grain under my skin like a familiar road. Catherine stayed quiet and let time resume. The clock began to tick again. In the quiet between ticks, the evening replayed itself in smaller pieces. The words, the papers, the moment numbers turned into truth. Catherine touched the back of the chair. "You did well," she said. "You held your line." "It felt like cutting my heart out," I said. "But I did not want to bleed to death slowly." She nodded. "Grief can stand beside protection," she said. Tonight it did. We walked to my small office. I watched her scan and log the lab results, then seal them in a labeled envelope with her signature across the flap. She slid the birth record copy into a sleeve. She drafted a short letter for me to sign, addressed to the county recorder and the probate clerk, confirming that no deed or transfer may be processed without my sworn signature, and that counsel of record is Catherine Lewis. The numbers in her text read like mile markers. $2.5 million in assets across accounts, a $700,000 homestead, a $300,000 savings reserve, locked to a branch only. Facts in lines, lines that hold. When she finished, I sighed. Ink on paper, not a ceremony. Action. She turned the recorder on and read the time, the names, the conclusion that no documents were signed by me and that she left my home with originals for safekeeping. Then she clicked it off and pressed it into my hand. "Keep the copy," she said. "I will send secure duplicates in the morning." At the door, she paused. "They may push again," she said. "Softer or louder. Call me first." I said I would. After she left, the rooms felt whiter, as if the walls had edged back. I washed 2 glasses at the sink and watched the porch light paint a small bright square on the steps. In that square, I could see the tiny nicks from one summer when Angela danced in party shoes and Margaret clapped the beat. Memory does not vanish because someone wants your deed. It rises, stubborn and kind. Sometimes it stings. Sometimes it holds you up. My phone buzzed. It was David. He wrote that he was nearby if I needed anything, that he would wait for my call. I told him there had been more truth than shouting, and that we would meet with Catherine to plan a careful next step for Ben. He replied with one word: grateful. I set the phone down and walked the perimeter of the house the way a farmer walks fence before a storm, locks secured, Windows latched. The old habit steadied me more than any pep talk could. Back in the dining room, I straightened a fork that had drifted a breath to the left. Not because a fork matters, because alignment does. I gathered the extra papers into a drawer and slid it shut. On my way to the hallway, I put my palm on the frame of our wedding photo. "It is ending, Margaret," I said softly. "Not us. The lie." I sat for a long while, letting quiet be quiet. Somewhere, a car door closed. A dog barked once and then remembered the hour. The night settled around the house like a resolved chord. My mind circled the details one last time. The pre-tabbed signature lines. The mail-away notarization. The address was not mine. The birth certificate with a blank that should have been filled long ago. The way Angela pressed her fingers to her mouth as if to dam a flood too late to stop. I felt anger and love inside the same chest, and the odd, surprising relief that comes when a secret finally names itself and stops knocking on the walls. Sleep came late. When it did, I dreamed of a counter at the county office. Catherine handed planks across it, and each plank was a page, and each page had a stamp that sounded like a small door closing. We laid the planks over water and walked home dry. Morning light found the table where everything changed. The wood sent it back warmer than yesterday. I texted Catherine gratitude, and she replied with a mid-morning appointment. I put the recorder on the desk with the duplicate documents and the letter we had signed. When the drawer clicked, something in me clicked with it. Not a door closing on family, a door closing on permission to be used. If you stayed with me through this, you know what was taken and what began to return. Feeling invisible hurts, does it not? If you believe every person deserves to be seen and to have justice, comment the keyword justice. Now watch what we do next, because this was only the turn, and the rest of the story is how we make the pain carry us someplace worth standing. Before bed, I wrote 3 notes by hand and dated each one. One for the branch manager confirming the transfer freeze and the 5,000 counter rule. One for the county recorder requesting a file stamp on our letter for the $700,000 homestead. One for myself, a promise that I would not take another meeting without counsel or a witness. I folded them and set them with my keys. The paper is small, but it turns a vow into something you can hold. I woke the next morning with the dining table still in my head. The envelope, the signatures, Angela's face pale in the lamplight, Mark's voice breaking into anger when he realized control was gone. All of it lived in me like a storm that had passed but left trees split and shingles scattered across the yard. The sun was coming in through the blinds, soft and golden, but I felt the weight of what came next. The high point of confrontation was behind me. Now I had to finish the work, to turn the mess they created into something settled, something that could no longer be touched. I walked into the kitchen and poured myself coffee. The steam rose and carried me back to the night before. Margaret's photograph still hung above the fireplace, and I could almost hear her voice telling me to see it through, to make sure the house and the money would not be twisted into someone else's tool. That thought steadied me. I took the first sip and began to outline in my mind the things that needed to be done. Catherine had told me the court clerk would have the documents by the end of the week. The freeze on my accounts was already active. But there was more. More I had to do to cut the strings Angela and Mark had been weaving around me. That afternoon, I met Catherine in her office. The place smelled of polished wood and ink, heavy with the sense of seriousness. She had already prepared the follow-up filings. One packet was addressed to the probate court, confirming my estate plan stood as written, with no changes allowed without my presence. Another was for the recorder's office, a reaffirmation of my deed to the house. She explained that by recording it again, dated with the events of last night, we built another layer of proof that I had not surrendered ownership. As she slid each paper across the desk, I signed, my hand steady. For years I had felt my life shrinking, as though every document I once controlled had been slipping into someone else's drawer. Now, for the first time in months, I felt the pen in my hand was mine, and every signature was a wall rebuilt. If you're still watching and find this story interesting, please comment 2 below to let me know you're here with me. We spoke about the $2.5 million in assets. She reminded me that diversification was important, but so was protection. We outlined a plan: move half into accounts with dual verification, with Catherine as backup counsel, and half into a charitable trust I had been considering for years but never acted on. A scholarship fund in Margaret's name. The thought of children she had never met finding a future because of her brought a sting to my eyes. Catherine looked at me kindly and said, "This way, your legacy cannot be touched by family politics. It becomes something larger." I nodded. The betrayal had burned deep, but perhaps some good could grow from the ashes. When I left her office, I felt lighter. The courthouse building across the street reflected the afternoon sun, and for the first time in a long while, it did not look like a place of threat, but a place of order. I walked down the steps slowly, taking in the sound of my own shoes on the stone. Each step felt like a reminder. I was still here. I had not been erased. The days that followed were a blur of tasks. I met with the bank again, sitting across from the branch manager who had personally flagged the suspicious transfer. He shook my hand firmly and told me I had done the right thing. "Families can be complicated," he said gently, "but the paper trail is clear. No one can touch your savings now." He printed out the confirmation. $300,000 in the savings account, locked and secure, with every withdrawal requiring me in person. I folded the paper into my pocket like armor. Angela called once. Her voice was thin, breaking. She said, "Dad, please, we can fix this. Mark got carried away. We only wanted to help." I let her words hang in the air before I answered. My voice was calm, not cruel, but firm. "You wanted to help yourselves," I said. "I cannot forget that. You tried to take everything, and you would have left me with nothing but a bed in a home and the sound of strangers' voices down the hall. I won't let you rewrite it now." She began to cry softly, but I could not let it pull me back. I told her, "I wish you well, but from now on, there are boundaries. Do not come to this house without calling. Do not ask me about money. That part of our life is over." She whispered she was sorry, but I set the phone down after. I felt the ache in my chest, but also the clarity that comes when you choose dignity over compromise. Mark did not call. Word reached me through neighbors that he had stormed out of the house 2 nights after the dinner, shouting in the driveway, slamming his car door. They said Angela stood on the porch, arms wrapped around herself, and he left without looking back. Perhaps it was the beginning of their unraveling. Perhaps it was just another storm in their house. Either way, it was no longer mine to weather. I spent my evenings walking the neighborhood. The old oak trees had begun to drop leaves, and the sidewalks were scattered with gold and rust. I found peace in the simple rhythm of steps, in greeting neighbors who waved, in remembering that life exists outside betrayal. At home, I pulled out Margaret's recipes, cooking meals I had not touched in years. Beef stew with red wine, chicken pot pie with flaky crust. The house filled with smells that belonged to us, not to schemes or lawyers. I ate slowly, letting memory become comfort rather than grief. Catherine kept me updated. The probate clerk had stamped our filings. The deed was re-recorded at the county. The scholarship trust paperwork was approved, funded with $500,000. The rest of my accounts are safe, untouchable without my presence. She told me I had turned their attack into a fortress. "They cannot reach you now," she said. I thanked her, and for the first time I believed it. Angela tried again once more. She appeared at my door one Saturday morning, her face pale, eyes rimmed red. She held a letter in her hand. "Dad, please read this," she said. "I can't lose you." I looked at her, my heart torn between the father who had carried her on his shoulders and the man who had been nearly robbed by her hand. I took the letter, but I did not open it. I told her, "Angela, love without respect is not love. You crossed a line I cannot uncross. I will always be your father, but we will not go back to what we were. You need to find your own path now." She cried, begged once more, but I did not move. Finally, she turned and walked down the steps, shoulders shaking. I closed the door gently, leaned against it, and whispered to Margaret's photo, "I hope she finds her way, but I can't carry her anymore." News reached me weeks later. Angela had moved into a small rented apartment, and Mark had left for another city. Their plans had collapsed, their marriage strained. The money they wanted was gone from their reach, and the family they tried to control was fractured. I felt sadness, yes, but also a strange justice. They had chosen their path, and the weight of it was theirs alone. I turned my focus to what remained. I walked through my home, touching the walls I had built, the floors I had laid, the photos that told a story of love and work and endurance. I kept the house. It was mine, not just in paper, but in spirit. Yet I also knew I wanted to do more. I contacted the community center downtown, asking if they needed volunteers. When they said yes, I smiled. A new chapter was waiting, one where my time and resources could build something beyond bloodlines. The winter came, and with it, a quiet peace. I spent evenings reading by the fire, mornings walking in the crisp air, and afternoons writing letters for the Scholarship Trust. I began to feel not only safe, but purposeful again. The betrayal no longer ruled my thoughts. It became a scar, a reminder of what I had endured, but not the shape of who I was. One evening, sitting by the fire, I whispered again to Margaret's photograph. "I didn't lose everything," I said. I found myself again. I learned that love without respect is empty, and that respect begins with how I treat myself. I am not invisible. I am not weak. I am still here. The flames flickered, and I felt lighter. Angela sent another letter in the spring. This time she wrote pages about regret, about mistakes, about fear of losing me. I read it slowly, then placed it back in the envelope. I did not write back, but write. Some bridges cannot be rebuilt, and in the silence, I felt peace. I realized I did not need her apology to live. I had my house, my trust, my quiet. I had dignity. That was enough. As I prepared for the next stage, I looked at the scholarship fund papers again. The first applications were arriving. Students with dreams, with need. Their words filled me with hope. I thought of Margaret and how she would have smiled knowing her name carried them forward. That was the legacy that mattered, not the money Angela and Mark tried to steal. The journey was not without pain, but it ended with clarity. I had faced betrayal, and I had chosen not to let it define me. I had drawn boundaries, enforced them, and found freedom in doing so. The people who tried to take everything from me ended up with nothing, not because I punished them, but because truth always punishes lies, eventually. Now, when I sit at the table, the one where they once laid out their contracts and schemes, I sit with peace. I eat simply, I drink my coffee slowly, and I remind myself, I am free, I am worthy, I am not erased. And I whisper softly but firmly, I don't need them anymore, I have myself. As the chapter closed, I could feel the next one waiting. The community center, the scholarship, the small joys of cooking, walking, and reading. A life not built on fear, but on choice. Betrayal had been the fire, but peace was the light that came after. I had always imagined the end of such a storm would leave only ruins, empty rooms, and silence too heavy to bear. But what I found, in the weeks after everything collapsed, was not ruin at all. It was space, space to breathe, space to reclaim myself. The walls of my home no longer carried the echo of betrayal. They carried my own footsteps, steady and calm. Every morning I woke early, opened the curtains, and let the light pour in. The house, worth $700,000 on paper, meant more to me than numbers. It meant survival. It meant dignity. It meant I had not been erased from my own story. I would make coffee, strong and black, and sit at the oak table I had sanded myself years ago. Once that table had been the stage for arguments, for hidden contracts, for lies whispered behind my back. Now it was only mine again. I laid out the newspaper, folded my reading glasses beside it, and felt a calm I had not felt in years. I chose to live differently. I began volunteering at the community center downtown. Twice a week, I joined a group of men and women my age to clean the neighborhood park. We raked leaves, planted flowers, and painted over graffiti. On Saturdays, I sat in the chess club, moving pieces across the board with strangers who soon became friends. The rhythm of the games, the laughter, even the small arguments about strategy, reminded me that life was not just survival. It was connection. One afternoon, while helping to plant tulips in the park, I looked around at the younger volunteers, college kids with dirt under their nails and hope in their eyes. I thought of Margaret, of how she would have smiled seeing me there, finally living beyond the weight of inheritance and betrayal. I whispered under my breath, "I made it, Maggie. I made it out." Angela tried once more. A letter arrived in the mail, her handwriting shaky. The paper creased as if she had clutched it too tightly before sending it. She wrote about regret, about realizing too late the damage she had caused, about nights lying awake in a small rented apartment. She begged for forgiveness. I read every word, but when I reached the end, I folded the letter back into its envelope and placed it in a drawer I rarely opened. I did not reply. I told myself quietly, I don't need their apology. I have my life. And in that moment, I felt the full truth of it. Mark never wrote. From what I heard through the grapevine, he had left Angela, moved to another city, and was trying to rebuild his life far away. Some said he had taken a job that paid less than he once boasted about. Others said he had gambled away what little savings they had. I did not care to know the details. What mattered was simple. The two of them, who once stood so confident, believing they could bend me into silence, were now the ones diminished. They lived in a cramped apartment, struggling with bills, while I lived in peace. The contrast was sharp, and though I felt sorrow for my daughter, I also felt justice. The turning point for me came one quiet evening. I had been sorting through old boxes in my bedroom closet when I came across a small wooden case. Inside was my father's watch, the one I had not seen in decades. The leather strap was worn, the face scratched from years of use, but it still ticked faintly when I wound it. I sat down on the bed and held it in my hand. My father had once told me, "Money comes and goes, but what you do when no one is looking, that's who you are." The watch felt heavy with truth. It reminded me that character is the only wealth no one can steal. I whispered to myself, "This is what lasts, not the money, not the house. Integrity." The community work grew into more than routine. I found myself mentoring a boy at the center, guiding him through school applications, reminding him that honesty and effort were worth more than shortcuts. He asked me once why I spent so much time there. I told him because giving back fills the space betrayal tried to empty, and because I want someone to know that respect matters. If you're still watching and find this story interesting, please comment 3 below to let me know you're here with me. Evenings became gentler. I would sit on the balcony, overlooking the park I now helped care for. The golden light of late afternoon poured over the grass, children's laughter rang out, and I felt a sense of belonging that I had thought was gone forever. The air was crisp, and I often whispered, "I finally found where I belong." Angela sent another letter months later, shorter this time. She simply wrote, "I am sorry. I know I may never see you again." I folded it quietly and slipped it into the same drawer. There was no anger in me anymore, only clarity. Some bonds, once broken, cannot be repaired. And I had learned that preserving my dignity was worth more than maintaining a connection built on disrespect. In that calm, I reflected on the lessons carved into me by fire. For parents, I knew this. Love your children, yes, but never hand them the keys to your entire life. Keep boundaries, because boundaries protect not only your wealth, but your dignity. For children, I knew this. Love from a parent is not the same as entitlement. To mistake one for the other is to destroy the very trust that love was built on. And for humanity in this modern world, I knew this. Greed will always rise, wearing new faces, new disguises. But truth, though it may bend in the storm, will not break. One afternoon, while sipping tea on the porch, a neighbor stopped by. She said she had heard about what happened, and she told me she admired how I carried myself through it. I smiled softly and replied, "I didn't always carry it well, but I learned. Sometimes the hardest storms show you who you are meant to be." She nodded, and in her eyes I saw understanding, maybe even respect. That simple exchange felt like closure. The watch from my father now sits on the table by my bed. Each night, before turning off the lamp, I touch it, winding it just enough to keep its steady tick. It reminds me that time is not to be wasted on bitterness. It is to be lived with purpose, with dignity, with boundaries clear and firm. And so I go on. The park is brighter now with flowers. The chessboard waits for me on Saturdays. The scholarship fund in Margaret's name has already sent 3 students to college. Their letters arrive with gratitude that makes my chest swell with pride. This is legacy. This is meaning. Not stolen accounts or forged papers. Not lies whispered in shadows. Sometimes, when the air is still, I imagine Margaret beside me. I tell her, I kept us safe. I carried our name with honor, and I finally found peace. In those quiet moments, I know she would be proud. I never opened Angela's last envelope again. I never picked up the phone when she called. I chose silence, not out of cruelty, but out of self-respect. Some doors must stay closed for peace to last. My final thought on it was simple. I do not need their voices in my life. I have my own. As I sit now on the balcony, the sun dropping low, painting the sky in amber, I take a long breath and let it out slowly. I whisper the words that carry me forward. Every day proves I chose right. I am where I belong. I am free. The story has come to an end. I hope it has brought you valuable lessons and insights. If you enjoyed this content, please like, share, and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss the next video. Goodbye, and see you again.